with us. North Korea is threatening to cancel next month's summit with US President Donald Trump. The country is rather upset with Washington's demand that it gives up its nuclear arsenal. Let's go live now to the man I spoke about before the break, our US correspondent, Simon Marks. Hello to you, Simon, joining us from Washington, D.C. So it seems the handshake that we saw between the North and the South Koreans is all getting muddied up with America again.
Oh, very much so, Gareth. Very much so. I mean, that summit meeting is due to take place on June the 12th in Singapore. The stage set for what would be, were it to happen, an historic first meeting between a sitting president of the United States and a sitting leader of North Korea, Kim Jong-un, of course. But suddenly there are bumps in the road on what could turn out to be a dead end, although it's possible that it will still lead to that meeting in Singapore, because overnight the North Koreans issued a series of statements, cancelled high-level meetings that were supposed to get underway today with the South Koreans, and made it very clear that they are not interested in conversations about denuclearization in exchange for economic assistance and compensation from the United States. And the attacks that the North Koreans published were focused very heavily on two senior US government officials within President Donald Trump's inner circle, the new Secretary of State, Mike Pompeo, and the new National Security Advisor, John Bolton. And North Korea's Vice Foreign Minister essentially intimated that their involvement in this process was not acceptable from Pyongyang's point of view. So this raises huge questions about whether the summit in Singapore can go ahead. It's an enormous challenge for President Donald Trump. The North Koreans appear to be saying they want joint military exercises that are taking place between the United States and South Korea to be called off. That's impossible for Donald Trump to do, because he has pledged to maintain maximum pressure on the North Koreans as we head to that June the 12th summit in Singapore, a summit that now has got a very big question mark hanging over it.
Yeah, and no clear answer at this particular point. It was always going to be very tricky, though, Simon Marks, wasn't it, when it came to the South and the North Koreans trying to work together, knowing the tension between the North Koreans and America. One can only imagine in that conversation that the presidents from the South and North Korea's had would have somewhere spoken about that relationship with the Americans.
Oh, absolutely. And the Americans suspect that what the North Koreans are doing here is kind of probing to see just how much give Donald Trump will offer on the road to Singapore, because South Korea says, look, Kim Jong-un was well aware that these joint military exercises were going to take place regardless of the agreement to meet in Singapore on June the 12th. So they say this should come as no surprise to the North Koreans. Foreign policy veterans here in Washington, D.C. say, look, this is exactly why the Trump administration was naive in giving the North Koreans a pledge that they would meet. They would allow President Trump to meet Kim Jong-un in Singapore next month without getting any preconditions in return. I mean, the White House did secure, to be fair to the Trump administration, the release of those 3 American prisoners in North Korea, but not much else. One tantalizing question that President Trump has waved off when he's been asked it 2 or 3 times in recent weeks is whether he has ever spoken to Kim Jong-un. Do they have any kind of telephone dialogue underway between the two of them? He hasn't answered that question. If there is that kind of back-channel dialogue underway, perhaps the two leaders can unpick all of this, but at the moment this certainly looks like a pretty major obstacle to that summit taking place next month.
All right, let's wait to see what happens. Simon Marks, my thanks to you all the way from Washington, D.C., watching what is happening between America and North Korea now, with the summit very much questionable as a result of the ongoing joint military drills between South Korea and America. It seems North Korea very, very unhappy.